Going on, guys? It's your boy Luke here for another Prize Picks preview, this time for our early leans for tonight's NBA slate. It's Saturday, January 29th, and even though we don't have the complete board up yet, there are plenty of props that I have my eyes on, whether it's some of the studs on the slate like a Steph Curry, whose fantasy prop is just well too low, or of course some of the other options like a James Harden that should be in for a great matchup in prime time. Either way, these are going to be four that I'll be adding to my card, and of course that I may be building around later on in the day. As more and more of the props hit the board, more and more injury situations open up. You guys know the drill. Those are the best opportunities to hop on Prize Picks. And if you haven't hopped over to Prize Picks yet, make sure you guys use code Gundacker when you sign up. That way you guys get a 100% deposit match up to $100. I'm sure a lot of you have already joined Prize Picks, so unfortunately can't hop on that, but if you're new to the website, definitely make sure you go ahead and do so. A little review of yesterday's picks, which quite frankly weren't all that great. We went 1 for 4, so we'll be quick here. We did hit the DeMar DeRozan PRA over 35.5. He hit that quite comfortably there in the 40 range. The rest of our picks, though, the last three weren't the best. First off, Jason Tatum and Trae Young did not hit their PRA. Both went under. We took the over there. That ended up being a relatively non-competitive game. Down the stretch, it was over a 20-point margin, which of course meant that Tatum and Young came off early, did not get that closing run, which they really need to hit that PRA. So if that had been a close game, I was confident that both of those were going to hit the over there. That was unfortunately not the case, but that's what we get when we take these correlated type of builds. When we take two guys from the same game, you're pretty much betting that that game's going to be close, and if it is, more often than not, they're going to hit their over. Both were well on pace to go ahead and do so, but if it ends up being a blowout, that's what you get, right? It's a highly volatile strategy, but something I do like to target, and something I'm not going to shy away from in the future, right? Just because it was a blowout this time around, we got burned this time, doesn't mean that it's not a good long-term strategy. And lastly, we had the Cade Cunningham over 28.5 PRA. He ended up being 0 for 13 at 1 point shooting, 0 for 7 from the field in the first quarter. The guy couldn't hit anything, couldn't hit water if he fell out of a boat. Is what it is. You're going to go into some of these shooting slumps at times. Really should have been at the very least a 3-on-1 day. Ended up getting a little bit unlucky there, and it is what it is, right? We're moving on to today. We definitely have a lot of room for improvement. And the last time we went 1 in 4 for some of our picks, we ended up going 4 for 4 the next day in golf. So I like that kind of juju. I like our chances to bounce back. So let's go ahead and hop right into the picks for today to try and build some momentum going forward. All right, guys, on the screen, you can see the Prize Picks board, at least so far for today. At the top, we're going to have the Joel Embiid PRA, in which we're going to be taking the under, which might be surprising to some of you, especially with this matchup against the Kings. But 49.5 for anyone, let alone somebody like Joel Embiid who doesn't put up many assists, it's just quite frankly too high, right? If we take a look at the box score here, you can see of late has been on an absolute tear, averaging 56.2 PRA. There's been a lot of good matchups there. The Clippers, the Magic, the San Antonio Spurs, the Pelicans, the Lakers, all of them pace up spots. And we get that same exact matchup today. The fact of the matter is, though, for Joel Embiid to go out there and hit over 49.5, he's got to score at least 35 real points. I mean, he's not going to put up 5-6 assists, probably looking at 2 to 3 in terms of his median. He's going to put up 11 to 12 rebounds per game, which makes this 49.5 number really far-fetched, right? Even for somebody like a Nikola Jokic, that can be hard to get to at times. So even though it's a great matchup, even though he's had these recently inflated box scores, that's why we see it almost close to 50, right? And you're going to see people still take the over there, right? Trying to ride that type of form. The fact of the matter is, he is due for some negative regression in those stats soon, and I would not be surprised if he gets to 47 or 48 but doesn't get over that 50-point mark. So we'll be taking the under on Joel Embiid there, despite the good matchup, despite some of that recent form. That's just been accounted for in their algorithm, and if anything at this point, he's actually overpriced. If he goes out there and scores 40 real points, sure, he's going to end up burning us. That's a top 20th, top 15th type percentile performance for somebody like a Joel Embiid. So the other 85% of the time, we're going to come out on top. So I do like that type of play there, and it comes in as my first play. Next up, we're going to have the Ja Morant PRA. That is at 41.5 here against the Washington Wizards. First off, the matchup, it's average, right? It's not really it's not going to help them. It's not going to hurt them. They're a team that runs with a relatively high pace, but they have gone much better in terms of their efficiency. You're talking about a top 15 team in terms of efficiency. A little bit worse than that in terms of pace. They do run with some pace, love chucking up some shots. If we take a look at Ja Morant's box scores, much like a Joel Embiid, has been absolutely lighting it up. See 52.6 PRA over his last 5 games. He's had games of 55, 54, 54, 50. He's very consistently been taking people apart. And some of these matchups have been a lot more tough. You're talking the Milwaukee Bucks team that arguably one of the best defensive teams in the NBA, this Mavericks team, which is a top 11 defensive efficiency team. And even Utah, which we know how good they are on defense, he was able to post 50. And now that he gets a team that's much more average in the Washington Wizards, why not expect him to go out and continue this form, right? It's not like he's somebody like a Joel Embiid where we've seen that number raised to nearly 50. Morant's at a very comparable number to what we saw over the last few weeks, maybe a point and a half higher, that type of thing, but not a whole 10 PRA higher than in the past. So willing to take the over in this instance because we're looking at a really good situation. Next, let's move over to the assist props, where we're going to be taking a look at James Harden on the over against Golden State. These last 2 props going to be from the final game of the day. And something to note here is that Kyrie Irving will play, even though you do have to be vaccinated to be playing over there in Brooklyn. To visit the game over there in Golden State. You can get away with not being vaccinated. There has been a waiver or some type of exemption given to opposing players. So James Harden, Kyrie Irving, both will be active, even though Kevin Durant is out. So even though it is a little bit of an aggressive line, Harden's been much better than that of late. You can see he had 10 assists against the Cleveland. He had 9 against Washington, right? Missing it by the hook. That's at least a decent performance there. But 11 against the Spurs, 13 against the Timberwolves, and 11 against the Lakers. He's consistently been hitting the over there ever since Kevin Durant left the team. He's been the main distributor. And of course, Kyrie Irving, some of those other players like a Patty Mills have been the scorers. I would not be surprised if James Harden went out there and got us 30 points tonight, but in either situation, he is going to be distributing the ball. I'm looking for him to get at least 12, 13 assists tonight, which gives him quite a bit of leeway there on the 9.5 assists. And as long as this stays competitive, we can be very confident in this prop, right? If it ends up being a blowout, much like any of the props here on the board, could end up hitting the under. But because he does have Kyrie Irving tonight, while it seemed like a negative for some of his other stats, like fantasy points, his real points, everything like that, sure, we have to project James Harden a little bit lower. It does give the Nets a much better chance of keeping this game competitive. So I do like that 9.5 assist mark because Irving is back. Not quite as much risk there. And now finally, let's move to our last prop, which is going to be fantasy score, where we're going to have the over on Stephen Curry. And quite frankly, I don't understand this line. This is a pace-up spot. This is a spot where we're dealing with a relatively bad defense in terms of their efficiency. And though the Nets are better this year than in years past, they're still not one of the better teams in the league on defense, right? They have a lot of liabilities, especially with some of the injuries that they've had on their team. And if we take a look at Stephen Curry's game log over these last 5 games, and see 58 fantasy points, 48. The 28 against Utah, we can attribute that to a tough matchup. But of course, 38.3 against Dallas, 52.6 against, again, a decent team up there in the Timberwolves. I really do like this matchup. I have him projected currently for 44.5 fantasy points, which gives him a 6-point cushion there. And of course, Stephen Curry going to at least give us a relatively high floor. We know he's going to do scoring for this team. He's going to be a distributor. If he ends up getting those rebounds, 5 to 6 this game, should very comfortably hit the over here. It's one of my favorite props on the slate. Probably my favorite to this point. My second favorite would be that Joel Embiid prop, which I think is just way too high there. But all 4 of these I feel pretty good about. I mean, yesterday I did mention that they felt like 5 to 6 point edges. Here we're looking at 10 to 15% margins. So definitely at least a little bit of a softer market this time around, which should bode well for our success. So I'll be playing these for a flex play. It's the first card that I have up today in terms of my strategy. And later on, I'm going to be looking to mix these into some of my other cards. As per usual, a majority of my cards come later in the day after some of this injury news drops. As we start to get some of these lines moving, really opens up a lot of value, at least in one direction or the other. So that's how I usually handle this. Of course, I may add a few more cards. I may do a power play on this too. I have it as a flex play right now. But like I said, I feel pretty good about all 4 of these props. So may sprinkle in a power play as well. We'll have to see come tomorrow. all I've got for today's Prize Picks preview. If you guys haven't already checked out my personal YouTube page, a link is down in the description for that. It's Gsluke DFS. I'm doing Prize Picks previews for NBA, for golf on there as well. I also cover a lot of other DFS sports like DraftKings, FanDuel, for golf, football, NBA, MMA, a bunch of different sports from an analytical type of approach. I use a lot of mathematical modeling, a lot of what I used to do as an engineer to take on sports. So if you're looking for videos like this, more of my content, make sure you guys go over there and subscribe so you don't miss any of that. But today, not going to be any more Prize Picks content coming out. No stream for Gundacker this afternoon. We're going to have regular scheduled content coming out in the future from Monday through Friday, of course, as per usual. So make sure you guys are looking out for that. If you haven't already subscribed to this channel, Gundacker, make sure you guys go ahead and do so as well. That way you don't miss any of that Prize Picks content coming in the future. If you haven't already liked the video, make sure you guys go ahead and do that. And down in the comments before you get out of here, go ahead and let me know what your favorite prop for tonight is. It doesn't have to be anything we mentioned in the video. It could be something completely off of my radar. But whatever that favorite prop is, make sure you go ahead and let me know down below. As always, good luck with all of your prop hunting for tonight. And let's get this cash, guys.